Hey, Brooke here. What happens when you raise an entire generation to believe they're special and then hand them student debt, two economic crashes, and the gig economy? You get millennials, the generation that was told to follow their dreams during a recession. The most overeducated, overanalyzed, overcaffeinated generation in history. And psychologically, they're fascinating. Millennials, roughly born between 1981 and 1996, grew up during peak self-esteem culture. This was the era of participation trophies, gold stars, and motivational posters that confidently informed you that you could be anything. There was a cultural push toward building confidence in children. Later, psychologist Carol Dweck would popularize the idea of growth mindset, praising effort over fixed ability. And that matters, because when your identity is built around potential as opposed to stability, your self-worth becomes future-oriented. You're not living, you're constantly moving towards the version of yourself that you're supposed to become. Your value feels tied to what you might achieve. And then came reality. Millennials graduated into the 2008 financial crisis. Housing prices skyrocketed. Entry-level jobs demanded 5 years of experience. Wages didn't keep up with inflation. The ladder they were told to climb was on fire. The ladder and opportunities they were promised that previous generations had no longer exist. Psychologically, this creates what Leon Festinger called cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that happens when reality clashes with a deeply held belief. The belief was simple. If I work hard, I'll be stable. The reality was more complicated. I work hard and I still can't afford rent. That doesn't produce laziness. It produces anxiety. And millennials are described as the most anxious generation so far. So millennials adapt. They became the optimization generation. Morning routines, side hustles, productivity apps, podcasts at 1.5 speed. They don't just live life, they attempt to engineer it. Because when the external world feels unstable, control becomes currency. If you can't control the economy, you can at least control your habits. Productivity becomes identity. Rest becomes suspicious. Burnout becomes strangely aesthetic. And at the same time, millennials normalized therapy. They mainstreamed words like boundaries. They turned mental health into dinner table conversation. That's a strength, but it also means that they're hyper-aware of their inner worlds. Self-awareness is healthy. Hyper-monitoring is not. And then there's social media. Millennials were the first generation to grow up alongside it. Not born fully into it like Gen Z, but shaped by its evolution. They learned to build an identity publicly while still figuring it out privately. This taps into something called the spotlight effect, a term coined by social psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky. It's our tendency to overestimate how much other people notice us. In one study, participants had to wear an embarrassing t-shirt into a room. They predicted that about half the people would notice. In reality, nobody did, because everyone else was being the main character of their own story. Offline, the spotlight effect mostly lives in your head, but online, that's a different story. Your post does get views. Your story does get replies. Your LinkedIn update can technically be seen by your old supervisor. So millennials developed this subtle background awareness of being observed. And they got a brain that quietly assumes everyone sees where I am in life, even when they don't, or they care for approximately 3 seconds. But that constant perceived evaluation shapes behavior. And that's tiring. Millennials are tired, not just physically, but existentially too. They were taught that effort guarantees reward. When effort didn't guarantee reward, they oscillated between I must try harder and maybe none of this matters. That's a heavy psychological pendulum. Add economic instability, environmental concerns, and political polarization, and you get a generation that feels both deeply responsible and strangely powerless. But here's the part that doesn't get enough credit. Millennials are adaptive. They pivot careers. They embrace remote work. They question toxic environments. They normalized mental health. They build communities online. They've learned to create meaning without guarantees. And they're constantly breaking cycles. They aren't entitled. They're disillusioned idealists. They believed the story. And when the story ended up being fiction, they wrote their own. So if you're a millennial and you feel like you're balancing ambition with burnout, like you're tired but you're still trying, that's not weakness, that's adaptation. Like what your weird brain just learned, hit subscribe. If not, no worries. I'm a millennial, so I'll just cope by making a vision board and pretending like I can buy property.